Hi everyone, welcome. Feel free to check in the chat if you're signing on. Introduce yourself, where you're from, what you're excited about learning today. I'm excited to be here with you. If you did not get a chance to look at my introduction video, which is in the guide section of the group, just to introduce myself, my name is Amanda Baduris. I am a licensed psychologist in private practice in Oregon. I am a woman of color, a first-time business owner, and this is why it's so important for me to do things like this, because I didn't have a person to ask questions and get some direct guidance from. There's so many Facebook groups out there that are helping therapists, and I love that. And it's a lot of information. It's a lot to take in. So you all are here because you're interested in learning about intensives and what they are, how to structure them specifically. Just to let you know, if I'm looking down at all, I've got notes all prepared for today. So if I'm looking down, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure you all get a lot of value for the time that you're here. So let's see, if you are, oh, there's someone from Seattle, you're pretty close by then. Someone from New York, good, we've got the range of the time zones then. Chicago is my hometown, hi Chicago. Okay, so if you are feeling stuck with your clients, with your clinical work, if you are feeling overworked, like you are doing just a lot of work, taking on too many clients, seeing too many client hours, and like somehow still you're not making enough money, intensives are for you. So let's go through quickly. I've seen a lot of questions around like, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about an intensive? An intensive is really just a fancy word for an extended session. So it can look a lot of different ways of, we know the typical insurance model is like, the 90834s of the like 35 to 45-ish minute sessions. 90837 is more like 40, what is it specifically? 52 minute and above technically. So we know those, and that's just kind of how we learned to operate somehow, right? Like if you worked in community mental health, I did all of my training and work prior to private practice in a college counseling center. So I'm just very used to like, you do 50-minute sessions, that's just all you do. But I work with complex trauma. I work with a lot of people who have a lot of things behind them, and it's not enough time in 45 or 50 minutes, even if it's every week, to really get down to the work that needs to be done, right? For the people to get the healing that they're really wanting and looking for. So when I started private practice and was feeling stuck in like, oh, I just wish I had more time, I was like, why can't I have more time? Like it's my business, I can do what I want. I saw a few other people in some of these private practice Facebook groups of people saying they offer intensives and they love them. So really, again, all it is just an extended session. That can look however you choose it to look like, if that is. I know a lot of people will do just like a 90-minute session, right? Like that's an intensive session. Some people will do 2 to 3 to 4 plus hours of a session in a given day. So I'll talk a little bit about like when it comes to structure, just the fact that you do have flexibility in that, right? Like it's both about what works for you as well as your client, what fits in scheduling wise, because you're probably already a very busy clinician. So you have to think about like, how do I make space for this? How do I make the time for it? But all of that is very much doable. So the benefits of an intensive, again, you just get more time to, have deeper transformation for your clients. I've seen people make such huge shifts even around like the 70 or 80 minute mark that wouldn't have happened if we were just planning to end no later than 60 minutes. So people just get to go deeper in their processing. It's a lot more focused work, especially as we talk about, there's a difference between if you're doing like routine ongoing intensives with clients, like some people will do 90 minutes once a week, every other week, as like their ongoing plan. But some people are wanting more like package intensive. So like, this is my day, these are my 3 days to get as much healing in as much as possible. You really get to choose like a focus of like, okay, we've got these 2 days. What are we really working on here, right? Because if we're focused, we're not talking about all the things that have happened in between, like the routine week-to-week sessions. We're not talking about, oh, and remember that person I talked about over there, and sharing all those updates. It's just, this is what we're here for. Let's talk about it. Let's work on it. Let's do some healing. So a lot of people see accelerated progress in terms of their therapeutic goals, in terms of even on the clinician side, like it's so empowering to see someone make such a huge shift in their clinical, their kind of clinical journey, right? Of feeling like after 2 days, my life is completely turned around. That's amazing, right? Like I really want this for you. I really want this for your clients. So comment in the section. Are you, in the chat box, are you excited about the potential of what intensives can do for you? And it's just about figuring out, well, how the heck do I do it? And that's why you're here. Some common concerns I know that come up for people is, yeah, you have to figure out, like, how do I make the time for this in my schedule, especially if I am in more of the traditional week-to-week model or hour-by-hour, week-to-week model. Yes, people are excited. So how do I make time for it? And also, how do I get clients excited about it? So, right, all the things that I just named around, people who have been feeling stuck, people who are feeling like, ugh, there's just not enough time to get to what I want to get to. Start talking with your clients about like, hey, like how would you feel about if we met for longer, than this period of time? Obviously, you'd have to figure out scheduling and making that work, but like, how would that sound for you? Like, how do you think that would look? You can talk about the financial component with them too, but really just to like make it known that that's an option, because so many clients really are familiar with, I've had a lot of people tell me, like, depending on insurance-based models, like, yeah, I've got my 30-minute session every 3 weeks. They have no idea that a 90-minute session is a potential. So we have to talk with them about it. Like, did you know that we can do this? What would that look like? What questions would you have? So really engaging your clients. In future trainings, I can probably talk through some like marketing pieces, how to have those conversations, what to put on your website, what would be helpful there. And then two, for you to be thinking about and looking at your schedule now, is there a way that I can prioritize these intensives, right? And that all depends on what you want it to look like for you. Are you wanting 90-minute sessions? Are you wanting more of like those packages of a couple of days at a time? So shifting into some of those pieces around like, well, what exactly do I do to like design these intensives? What does that mean for me? I've seen a lot of people talk about modalities specifically. Like there's a lot of people that you've probably seen, maybe even in this group, maybe in other private practice groups, who are talking about EMDR intensives. So like, absolutely, like EMDR is one of, I think, like the most popular spaces where I see intensives offered. Other trauma-informed approaches like brain spotting or accelerated resolution therapy, but you really don't need to have like a specific therapy and a specific protocol that lends itself to an intensive. You can do talk therapy intensives. You can do any kind. There's no like, this is really bad for like an extended session. I saw someone post somewhere in a group about extended exposure therapy may not work well for some people, which maybe, I'm not trained in that, I don't know. But just to think about, you can just have more time to talk through things with clients. Clients would be open to that. I do a once a month 90-minute with one of my clients and meet the other 3 weeks for like 60 minutes. But on that one 90-minute session, it's really just, well, can we have 45 minutes to talk about what are the updates, what are the things I'm realizing, what I want to focus on, and then we do like 30 minutes of EMDR or brain spotting. So it can be a balance. It doesn't have to be, this is our intensive session, now we're just only doing the intensive, only the processing. Like, it's just about, does it feel like you're limited in the 60 minutes? And can we make some adjustments, right, to get the client what they really want, what they really need, and also to help you, because the whole point of this intensive is not just, how do I help my clients? How do I help them achieve their goals and work towards those goals faster? But how do I ease the work on myself too? Because it's a lot to do 45, 60-minute sessions all the time. I find that intensives really don't drain me. Like, literally the word intensive sounds like, oh, that sounds exhausting. But I actually find that it gives me a lot more energy because I'm seeing the movement that my clients can make in such a short period of time. So if you're excited about that, that can absolutely be a potential for you. So thinking about all the different modalities you might use, anything really can adapt pretty well to an intensive. The specific intensive, so when you think about, again, is this 90 minutes that we're doing? by default, like that's the only way that you're working with a client, that's absolutely a possibility. Talking with that client about what makes sense. Do we meet weekly for 90 minutes? Do we meet every other week for 90 minutes? Do we do once a month 90 minutes the rest of the time that we meet, 45 to 60? So that's an option. Again, if you are looking at more of like the package model, which again, there's pros and cons to that as well. For example, if you're advertising to people who may come from out of state. So for example, me in Oregon, I have people in Washington who reach out to me. So that's just a 3-ish hour drive, depending if they're right on the border. But if they're out of town, they probably don't want to come for consistent intensives. So I see people when they're coming from out of town do more of like a 2 to 3 day kind of package, as opposed to like a 1 day, a half day, or more ongoing things. Obviously that depends too on where you're licensed and can you offer things across the state where you are licensed. So does the person want something that is more routine? Do they want a package that's kind of then considered like a one-off? I have had people who have done that. I've done a 2-day couples intensive where their plan was then, well, we want to find a different weekly therapist, but we just really wanted to get a ton of work done so that once we get to the weekly therapy, we've already got our goals clarified, we've already made some movement on it. We don't have to be in weekly therapy for as long, with the potential of, okay, well, if it doesn't work out with that therapist, maybe we'll come back to you either for weekly therapy or for another therapy intensive. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of flex, like how are you wanting to work based on who you work with, and again, what works in your schedule. For me, I offer a mix, like I've said, between I see some people routinely in an intensive model and I see some people just on kind of like the package model. So think about for you, what is ultimately going to work with your schedule? Are these things that you want to offer on the weekends if you don't already work on the weekends? If so, how do you also protect time so you still have time on weekends to kind of decompress? I try not to do more than 1 or 2 weekend intensives a month. But then 2, we can talk about this in a different, I saw like how do I price an intensive was also really highly rated on the polls. So that can definitely be next week's training if people would be interested in that. But me personally, I charge a higher fee. If I'm going to see you on the weekend, then there's a higher fee for that. And people are more than willing to do that because they understand not a lot of people work on the weekends and they want that accelerated progression. So a question for the day-long intensives, how many hours per day or total are they? So it's a good question. A lot of that can be dependent on who you're working with, what modality you're working with. I'll say for me, so I do trauma intensives and then I do couples intensives. For my couples intensives, a day long is 5 hours total because we would do the intake. I meet one-on-one with each of them for like further rapport building and just talking through like, well, what are your priorities here? What are your goals? We take a break for about an hour or 2 and then we come back for a 2-hour session and then we wrap up. For my trauma intensives, the day long is, I split it into an hour and a half, take like a half-hour break and then do another hour and a half. So that's part of what you want to think about too. If you're doing a day-long intensive, like what do you want to structure it for? And also, how are you working? Because on telehealth, for example, people might get really tired sitting in front of the screen for 3 or 4 hours. So that's where I've seen some guidance and I've done some experimentation with the 90 minutes does seem like a better fit. And if people are like, actually, can we go like 100 minutes this time? And then it's a different break and a shorter meeting when we come back. Like, again, you get that flexibility to decide how you want to structure it. So yeah, 3 to 4 hours is what I do, depending on if it's in person or if it's online. And kind of just assessing your own, what would be a word there? Endurance, I guess, to like, how long can I sit with this? Where's the client at? How long can they sit with that? And to know too, like you get to be flexible in what are you processing? Like just because it might be a trauma intensive doesn't mean the whole 3 or 4 hours has to be on processing, right? Like take breaks, work on resourcing, move from like a somatic therapy to some more talk-based therapy. So you get to do whatever you want in that. And then if you know that you are booking a day-long intensive and this is with someone who is not a routine client of yours. It's someone who maybe is traveling or maybe is doing more like adjunct therapy with you. What I do in my practice, and probably what I would recommend, is, if you were to only do like, okay, this is our 3 or 4 hours, this is where we're doing everything, like the intake, any assessments, any wrapping up, and including the processing kind of in between, that's probably still then not enough time for like, what does this person actually need to process in the intensive model. So even for a day-long intensive, for the trauma intensives I do a 60 to 90 minute intake beforehand, and then the intensive day is just the day for processing. And then depending on if they're still in my state, I'll have them come back a week or two later for another 60 to 90 minute just kind of follow up of like, how are you doing? How are things progressing? What are some goals that you have that you want to take back to the therapist that you're working with otherwise? Then you can do that. If it's someone who is leaving the state and you can't work with them because you're not licensed in that state, or there's no reciprocity or things like that, then I will usually save the last 20 minutes of the day-long intensive for doing that kind of processing and kind of wrapping up. Part of a process that I personally like, I've seen some people do it, I haven't seen all people do it, I haven't seen like explicit guidance on it, but what I really like to do after the intensive is to kind of write like a summary note of, here are the things we worked on, here are the triggers we processed, here's the work that we did, here's what we outlined as, here are the next steps, for both my trauma intensives and my couples intensives, because it is so much processing that people can also forget, like, well, what did I even work on? I'm not exactly sure. I know I feel lighter, I know I feel a little bit better, but like it can be easy to forget, what did we talk about in hour 1 when we're now on 6th hour of this. So that's something I like to do just in terms of my process for reminding people, like, this is the great work that you did. This is the movement that we saw. Of course, you still have some goals, but like you kind of quantum leaped in the process just by opening up that time. So again, coming back to just basic structure of intensive, think about what works for you. Do you want to do 90 minutes? Do you want to do up to a few hours in a given day? When do you want to take those breaks in your day? And then kind of what would that look like if it was a one-off versus if it's something that you're going to do more routinely with people. And then 2, I saw some people ask questions about what exactly does the intensive look like? Do people do this individual, couples, or groups? So again, you get to decide that. Like I've said, I do just individual intensives and couples intensives. I would love to do like a couples intensive retreat with like multiple couples one day, but that's a project for future, Amanda, so I'm not gonna worry about that now. But I've seen people do group intensives and say that it's worked really well. So that can be something to just consider of, like, for you, what is your goal? What's your why in adding the intensives, right? Like I've said, it's clearly like the title of this group is like your high ticket intensives. Like you can make a good amount of money doing this. You can find the people who are willing to pay you to do this. So then just thinking about, you don't have to offer all of the ones of like, well, how do I make the most amount of money? Because maybe, as I said, I want to do a couples intensive retreat. Someone in the audience cringed of like, that sounds terrible. I would never want to do that, even if I made a lot of money. So don't do it just because, it's good money that you can make, but think about, what is it for me? Like, what do I think is going to bring me the most joy? What would be helpful? The question about insurance covering intensives, it can be a yes, no. So I'm an out-of-network provider. I provide super bills to my clients, and I've seen people have some success in it because, especially if you do have, when I do the packages, for example, obviously there's an intake, there's the individual sessions in the couples intensive. So those are 2 different codes, 3 different codes altogether with the intake. And then there's the couple sessions. And then with an individual, there's the intake, there's the follow-up sessions. My understanding of insurance land is that at the beginning of the year, they actually removed one of those codes for covering extended sessions, aka beyond the, what does it go to? It's like the 53 to, it might even be just like 80 minutes or something like that. So my understanding is that code got taken away. So what I do is, I'll still give the super bill for, here's the 90837s. In my notes, I'll document, this is why meeting twice in one day was medically necessary. If it's a 2 or a 3 day back-to-back, I'll say, here's why that was medically necessary due to like this person seeing 2 other therapists and there's no symptom reduction. This person is in the severe category on the GAD. So there's lots of ways that you can advocate for it. And then obviously it's up to the will of different insurance plans on what they're going to do. I haven't billed insurance directly doing that, but I've seen others who offer intensives do. So my understanding is they would do it the exact same way, is just to, put all the codes on the CMS form, submit it, see what insurance will cover, and then just to have that conversation with your client around insurance may cover a good portion of it. It may not cover the full portion. You would encourage them, because again, you want to work smarter, not harder, encourage your clients to check in with their insurance provider around, is there a code for extended sessions that I can be reimbursed for? Because I think I saw maybe Blue Cross Blue Shield is trying to add something. I haven't seen if that's been confirmed or if that has worked for people. So I've seen people get parts of their intensive reimbursed. So that's a good sign, because again, any amount helps. And the whole purpose of this too is, yes, it's a bigger investment up front, but in the long run, they're very likely, and lots of research shows, attending fewer sessions because their symptoms are significantly reduced in the intensive format. So ultimately, again, just thinking through like, what kind of flexibility do you have in your schedule? How do you want to customize these different intensive options or packages? Talking with clients as you're talking with them and seeing like what might work for you, what might you be interested in? Do they want a mixture of the traditional and some intensive sessions, so that insurance might cover or reimburse multiple of them? But then some sessions you might pay a little bit more. So just being transparent with them around that. My couples intensives, depending on the day. So let me see. I think for a 1 day, I charge $2,000. For a 2 day, $3,500. I just changed my pricing a couple months ago, which is why I'm like, is that? No, I think I do $3,000 for a 2 day and then $4,500 for a 3 day. Most people book a 2 day because it's really easy for them to do like a Saturday, Sunday. And then my individual intensives are a little bit in alignment with that, but they're actually more than that. So my 1 days that I'll do, which is again, both like the day of the intensive, the pre-intensive appointment, and then a post-intensive appointment starts at like $2,200, depending on if they're doing it on a weekday or a weekend. So again, you can make a lot of money with this. Not that that's the only point, but also it is really beneficial to clients. So bringing in, like, as we're talking about like the money that you can make, the amount that you can charge for these things, I know that this brings up a lot of money mindset issues for people, right? Like as therapists, we're told we don't go into this for money. Like we don't think that these are things that work. Coming back to that piece around like insurance never said that you can work this way. Insurance may not want you to work this way because they want clients to use more and more of their plans and services so they can keep charging them premiums and things like that. So, right, like we have our own money mindset stuff around what does it mean for me to charge premium fees for these kind of services? Is anyone even going to want to pay me that? Am I going to be able to reach the populations I want to work with when it's this much money? What about all the other people who are already offering intensives? Why would they choose to work with me instead of one of them? Not enough therapists offer intensives. I get quite a few reach outs per month. I think last month I maybe got like 10 or 15 people specifically only asking about intensives. So people are wanting it. It's just about there's not enough people who are offering it. So more people need to do it. People see the value of, yeah, it's a lot of money, but if we can change really quickly and it fits better into our schedule, because I only have to take a day off of work instead of 2 hours every week to drive if it's an in-person therapy appointment, or I don't have to cover childcare or things like that. Like there's all these ways that you can reinforce this is actually more economical and it's more efficient. So to be able to think about like our own judgments, our own thoughts, our own worries about why this isn't going to work, and actually being able to figure out like just what's the messaging that I need to develop around why this is going to work, why people are already looking for me and this service, and how do I do that? So to be thinking about just how all of this fits into your current scheduling, your current platform, your current model of services. Again, I know there are some people who do intensives only. I like the variety of having some weekly, every other week clients and some intensives. So think about what works for you in terms of how it fits into your schedule. Think about, are there ways that you want to work towards? How am I going to incorporate this into my schedule? Like I started transitioning people from my Mondays to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday because I wanted to reserve Mondays for intensives. So that's mostly when I see my intensive clients. And really, again, have just seen so well how this works for clients, for people to tell me like, I've been in therapy twice a week for the past 3 years and haven't experienced the change that I did in 2 days, which in a trauma intensive is less than 6 hours. So it's pretty amazing what it can do. It's great what it can do for you financially. Last month alone, I made over $9,000 just from 4 intensive packages. So I think it was two days for intensives and then a 1-2 day for a couples intensive. So really helps boost your income for not that much more work. So really just think about what's possible. Think about what it is you want to do. What's your why in this? And then figure out what other steps do I need to make that happen. So like I said, pricing can be another topic that we talk about in a different week. I want to be mindful of people's time. People might have something to sign on to at the top of the hour where you are. But I'll leave a couple minutes if there's any questions that are on people's mind for these intensives. How do I structure them? And then too, just to know that I'm available. If you have more questions around how is this something I can apply in my business, you're welcome to direct message me. We can set up a quick call to talk about what is it exactly, what kind of support are you looking for. If you are wanting ongoing support from me, that's definitely an option that we can do. So any questions? And if not, otherwise, I'll let you have some time back in your day, and thank you everyone for coming. When I do 2 hours, what are the hours breakdown? So like a 2 days, what is the hour breakdown? Good question. So for my couples intensive, what I do for a 2-day is I do 5 hours on the first, so that I'm doing the intake, the 2 individual appointments, we take a break, and then I do 2 hours for a couple session. So 5 hours for the first day, and then I do 4 hours for the next day. So a 2-hour couples appointment, take a break for lunch, 2-hour couples appointment. For my 2-day trauma intensives, again, I tend to do 3 to 4 hours per day. So whenever we start, whenever we take a break in the middle, so anywhere between 6 and 8 hours across the 2 days. And 2, again, right, like even the days, the packages, whatever it is that you sell, you have flexibility in, is that something people are doing, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, like you can choose. It doesn't have to be back to back if that doesn't work with your schedule. I've done Monday, Wednesday, Friday for some people. Usually it's the people who are coming from out of town who want to do just all the days back to back, but some people like to mix it up in their schedule so that they also have like a full day to decompress before coming back into it. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I will go ahead and end the video. The replay will be posted shortly after I close everything out. So if there's anything that you missed or wanted to come back to, feel free to just go back to the page for this group, and then the guide section, there'll be a tab for that. You can go ahead and view the recording. You are very welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your time, your energy, your excitement for this work. I think it's really going to change your practices if you can get this as a service that you offer. So thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good rest of your day, rest of your week, and take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.